Hey, thanks for clicking on the video here. I'm Richard Howard with Richard C. Howard, LLC, with consulting. I've got Luke Robertson over here also on this call, who's really a subject matter expert in the Small Business Innovative Research Program, or federal grants. It's an opportunity that a lot of companies I'm working with either don't know about or didn't think would apply to them, but really with a little bit of creative thinking, this is an opportunity for you to get on contract with a government super fast compared to what the normal contracting timeline looks like, right? So instead of a year, think a month or two to actually be on contract with the government. So I want to let Luke introduce himself here, and then we're going to go through just some of the things that we think about when we're going after the SBIRs, and we're going to talk about the different phases and how we help companies land those contracts with the government. So Luke, if you could, tell us about yourself.
Hey, how you doing? Appreciate you having me on. I'm Luke Robertson. Long background in active duty Air Force. I was a pilot for 14 years. Went and learned Arabic, and then did foreign military sales out in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, working in the Saudi Ministry of Defense there. After I got out of the Air Force, I came on with Delta Airlines as a commercial pilot, and then ultimately left that to become director of strategy at a telecommunications company. And yeah, I've worked through the SBIR program. I'm familiar with it both from the government side and then also from the industry side. And I've been through this process quite a few times, and looking forward to share some information here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Luke's being pretty humble. He is one of the best I've ever seen at putting these applications together. He's never lost, by the way, a SBIR application that he's put in, which is a incredible record. A little bit about me, for those of you that I haven't spoken with yet. I'm Richard Howard. I actually served with Luke in the Air Force at one point in my career. I spent the first 12 or so years of my Air Force career flying intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, and then switched into acquisitions as a program manager. So I was leading organizations, program managers, contracting officers, engineers, et cetera, and putting companies on contract with the government. So I've put roughly $1 billion on contract for a variety of companies, from the big defense contractors all the way down to small startups. Luke and I managed a huge $100 billion portfolio in foreign military sales in Saudi Arabia. I managed large programs. And then once I retired, I started my consultancy. So we've been helping small businesses land government contracts in a variety of ways. But as we said, today we're focused exclusively on federal grants, and more specifically the SBIR program. So Luke, if you could, maybe top 3 reasons a company should be thinking about going after SBIR, and maybe a little bit about the program itself, giving a little background information.
Sure. Top 3 reasons, pretty straightforward. One is that you can get on contract with the US government quickly, just like what Richard said just a few moments ago. It's a matter of a few months rather than a multi-year process. And number 2 is what it does is once you're on contract under a AFWERX or a SBIR program, I'll explain a little bit about AFWERX here in a little bit, I suppose. What you have is a opportunity to then be able to sell your additional commercial products to the US government without having to go through the full competition path of responding to requests for proposals, et cetera, and be able to basically do a sole source sale without the contracting officer having to make a specific justification for that. And 3,
that's huge. Yeah,
absolutely. And 3, what it does is it will pay you to do 2 things. One is to do some of that market research, some of that business development, some of that capability analysis that you're probably doing anyway. So what the government wants you to do is to go out and find a user for your product, find a capability gap that's within the government's needs, and they'll pay you to do that. And then secondly, once you've identified a gap, there is a requirement that you need to fill, what they'll do is they'll then pay up to $750,000 directly, matching funds up to $1.5 million to modify your commercial product to apply it to the specific need that they, once again, already funded the research for.
Yeah, and let me stop you right there, Luke, because that is really, I mean, we've talked about this. It's almost unbelievable, right? So if you think about our clients, just in the natural progression of selling to the government, you have to have a business development model. You have to have a plan you're executing, and then you have to be reaching out, developing relationships, finding those capability gaps and trying to solve them, seeing where you fit in, who's doing the purchasing. And that takes time and effort and money, right? To be able, if you're paying someone to do that for you. But in the case of a SBIR, I mean, almost, if I break it down in my simple mind, that phase one is almost them paying you to do business development, right? So you could be getting a phase one SBIR could award you up to $50,000 if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And that $50,000 can be used just to find that government customer that's looking for what you're selling, right? And again, this is, whether you're selling a service or a product, the government is looking for people that have been successful in the commercial space because it minimizes risk for them. And if you just think about your product or service a little bit differently and how basically, and the way we walk through it with our clients is how can what you provide improve the lives of either those in the military or maybe a government process? What could you do that could potentially improve the lives of the people in the government in any way? And if you can make that fit into a mission category, which are pretty broad, Luke, you have an avenue for a SBIR phase one or phase two.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned phase one and phase two. So let me go ahead and I guess dig a little bit more into the kind of the architecture of this program as a whole. And before I get there, real quick, I just kind of want to mention what the purpose of the SBIR program is. Like, this is a fantastic opportunity for industry, but why is the government funding this? Like, what's in it for them, right? And it's really to do four specific things, and these are listed in federal statute, actually. One is to stimulate technological innovation. So they want small businesses, and by small business, we mean a company that has under 500 people, and there are some other restrictions, not very complex, but we can help you work through that, but stimulate that technological innovation.
Yeah, I just wanted to stop you right there for a second, and then for those that are watching, you're going to be considered a small business by the industry you're in, right? So for some industries, if you were selling something like tools, for instance, if you had and they're different for each industry. So you'd have 750 or less people working for you, you'd be considered a small business. If you are in software development, that's usually dictated by the amount of annual receipts each year. And that could be basically if you're making less than 27 million a year. So most companies do qualify as a small business. So I just wanted to throw that in there before we go on. Yeah.
And right, so the purposes, one is to stimulate that technological innovation, and then number two is to use small business to meet federal needs. So it's designed to kind of stimulate that piece of the economy, and then it wants to encourage participation by various disadvantaged businesses, and then finally, and this is something that is monumentally important, is that it is intended to increase that private sector commercialization of innovations that are derived from these federal contracts. So what you're doing is you're meeting a specific and articulated federal need, but what the government wants you to do is to then take that technology, those improvements that you've made on your products, and then commercialize them and then sell them in the real world. So what that means is that the government is not going to take any of the intellectual property. They're going to encourage you. In fact, it is actually part of this program to ultimately commercialize your products that are developed under this program beyond the federal government itself.
Yeah, and that, that it's funny, that makes a lot of sense for the government. And the reason it does is because if you're selling, let's say you have a software that you're selling to the government, but you're also selling it commercially, that means that the government isn't the only one footing the bill to make upgrades to your software, yearly updates or whatever it is. So you're getting a stream of revenue from the commercial side as well. So for the government, that makes a lot of sense because it really minimizes cost and risk for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of, the SBIR program is not a jobs program. So the intent here isn't to simply fund small businesses for the sake of funding them, but it is intended to increase that competition, the productivity, and the economic growth. So while the government is funding any kind of a SBIR proposal, they've got one eye on the capability of the company to deliver what it is that they say that they're going to be able to do, with also a strong recognition that this is a venture capital and the inherent risks associated with any kind of R&D are assumed, and the government understands this. And then secondly, what they're doing is they're looking at the specific needs that the government might have. And this is important as well, because what the SBIR program does is through various departments, like the Department of the Air Force, for example, they release a list of topics, and these are things that the organizations within the Air Force, once again as an example, has requested help on. But they also have open topic. So if there's something that you as a company do that is not listed as a specific requirement, it's still possible to pitch this, and not just possible, but likely that you'll then be selected to be able to meet a legitimate need. And thirdly, what they're looking at is that ability of the small company to become more and more competitive in the long run. So it's a broad view at the federal government's needs and at the wider economy as well.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points. And again, it's just thinking a little bit creatively of the service or product that you're providing, and then understanding that, that mission set that depending on the SBIR that they're going after, right? And being able to fit into that, whether it's an open topic or if it's something a little bit more specific. Even the more specific mission areas are still pretty broad within, one was base of the future, right? Is there, thinking through what your company does, is there anything that your company does that could innovatively make a military base, for instance, a better place, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of avenues to approach. And, this program also, you have on the Air Force side, you have Dr. Roper making a lot of great changes. And, really the government at large recognizes the difficulties of small business being able to do government work, right? Being able to land those government contracts. Because traditionally, it's a lot easier for the big companies to do that. They have teams of guys like us that are doing business development for them, that are identifying opportunities. They have teams of proposal writers. They have teams of subject matter experts, and they're all working at finding the government contracting opportunity and then getting on contract. And, the US government, the Air Force, in the case of AFWERX, is really making great strides at helping those smaller businesses, because that's where the real innovation is coming from. And those smaller businesses can't afford a team of 10 Luke Robertsons, right? But they might be able to work with us on a consultancy basis and get that application in and finally land a contract where they're not only getting paid to do the business development, but they're getting their product or their great technology, whatever it is they have, out in front of decision makers. They're getting it out in front of program managers and contracting officers. In some cases, the end user to get tools in hands or whatever it is that you've made. I mean, that's priceless. I mean, that's eliminating a huge cost up front for small businesses, being able to have that type of vision on the products and services that you have and getting paid to do it. I mean, it's really an amazing opportunity. Not to mention, we focused a lot on the phase 1 and phase 2, but there's tremendous opportunity after that to land large long-term contracts with the government. And there's some other programs we won't get into right now. But, Luke, if you could, just in synopsis, what do you think that if you had parting wisdom for one of these companies that's watching this right now that maybe was unfamiliar with the federal grant process, the SBIR process in particular, what would your advice be to them?
Well, really what I think it would be is consider your company and its direction, how you want to approach doing business with the federal government, how you want to commercialize your products going forward. And if there is something that you do or some program that you offer, some capability that you think may have some applicability to defense, reach out. I mean, Richard, obviously, like I've talked to you, and I know that you understand these processes. Reach out and find somebody who can potentially connect you with a decision maker within the Air Force to start doing that discovery process. And once again, to take it back to the SBIR, there is a way to get paid, and not just a way, there is a specific defined process under the SBIR program, which is a SBIR phase 1, to do that discovery. And then at that point, what you can do is you can determine by going through the SBIR process if your product is close to a requirement or some kind of a need that then possibly could either be then directly commercialized under phase 3, which is just a direct sales of the existing product that you have, or modified and improved or applied to specific use cases within the DoD under a phase 2. So basically, a company needs to be to reach out and see if there's a way that they can begin going down this process. And once again, it's not a long process. We're talking a matter of just a couple of months from flash to bang.
Yeah, there's plenty of great resources for small businesses out there. I mean, you could basically Google SBIR and get a lot of information on it. I can include some links within this email, and then also feel free to reach out. I'm going to leave a button where you can schedule a free consultation with me and/or Luke. And yeah, we could talk about your company and if we think SBIR is right for you. And if you choose to work with us, great. If not, it's still something you can do on your own. With just a certain amount of research and an application that you have to fill out and a few other things that we can talk about. So, Luke, thank you for this call. This has been great. Again, you are humble in the beginning, but I consider you the absolute SME on which is subject matter expert on federal SBIRs. So thanks again, man.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All
Take
right.
care.
Cheers. All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.